how have you seen pickleball grow, and talk a little bit about the pickleball community here in Cedar City and Iron County?
Yeah. So, you're totally right. It's just exploded the last few years. So it was actually first started in Washington State, and I'm pretty sure it was 1965 when they first
Really?
Yeah, these guys.
Well, and they use it's like a little wiffle ball. That's
right.
all it is, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it started just from what I understand, some guys playing in their driveway there. And so as far as the name, I think there's two different main theories, but the one that seems to be this is where it started is that those guys playing in their driveway. And apparently the dog's name was Pickles, and the dog would always go grab the ball, and then they named it.
That's the story we need to go with.
Yeah, so we'll go with that. I don't know if that's true, but
baseball, when you're in a pickle and it's going back and forth, that's what I was thinking maybe it came from. But a dog named Pickles, you've heard it, the legend. I mean, that goes along with the legends of the Sasquatch. While we're here, so
yeah. So, but anyway, it seemed to stay pretty small for a long time, and then the last 10 years or so, it used to, like you said, used to be seen as it's the old person sport. And now I probably shouldn't admit it here, but I play in tournaments pretty frequently, and I've lost to a 12-year-old kid in a tournament. So it's fun to see, a lot of younger kids getting into it now, tons of people, the college students, the SUU courts are always packed now. So it's just been growing really fast. So like you mentioned, most cities now are getting courts. And so St. George is where I would always go for tournaments, because they have the Little Valley Pickleball Complex there. And it used to be 24 courts. And then just in the last year or two, they put another $1 million into it to where it's 32 courts, and they did a big championship court now. Wow. And they host part of the PPA tour there. So all the pros come and play in St. George every April. Southern Utah, bringing it in. Yeah, exactly. And that's one for that tournament. I think last year they had about 1,000 players registered for it. So again, it's great for the local businesses, brings people in from all over the country that, you wouldn't believe the way people will travel to go play pickleball. And so in Cedar City, I felt like we were a little bit behind for a while. St. George, they have these nice complexes. They're running all these leagues, and here we just had the 6 SUU courts. That thankfully we had those for a lot of years, and thankfully SUU is so friendly with those that they opened it up to the community and let the community play there. So when I was in school, I took a pickleball class. They offer it as an elective class where you can go take a 1-credit class. Sandy Bryant was teaching it. A lot of the locals know her. She was, I think she was a tennis coach too, but then got really involved in pickleball. And so I took it as a student. I loved it. Took it again. Met some good friends through there, and these friends were. Thankfully they were really nice. They weren't nice as far as beating me. They would just beat me every time so bad. So they were all way better than I was. But I had a lot of fun. We'd rotate teammates. No matter who I played with, I'd lose every time. But I was learning a lot. And so I was just getting hooked, and I was like, man, I gotta get to where I compete with these guys. Yeah. And so that's just where I kind of got hooked, started playing with them a lot to where I could get, playing pretty competitive. And then my wife, her family member, my wife was actually the one that first introduced me to it. Okay. She has some family members that are really, really big into it, really good players. So my wife and we had to do, it was called an Edge project at SUU. They don't have it anymore, but it was basically some type of community service project that you could do. And so I was like, does running a pickleball tournament count as a service project? So we got it approved to do that, where that's what we did as our Edge project. And it was a big hit. There's a lot more signups than we thought. A lot of the community members were really excited about it. And it went really well. So that was a lot of fun. Then fast forward a year or two from then, Sandy Bryant was retiring, and so they needed a new person to be the pickleball instructor for that course. Oh, really? And so they were like, well, Jeremy ran this tournament. He knows something about pickleball at least. And you went from getting crushed to being the instructor. Yeah, gotcha. Exactly. So I started teaching that, I think, fall of 2020. So it's coming up on 5 years now that I've been teaching that. And then we, started running a league that we got approval through SUU again. And so the number one compliment that I get through the Innovation Center and just Cedar City as a whole is how well we collaborate with others. So SUU being willing to, go outside of the norm, not have this just be a student thing, but we had to reserve a certain number of spots for students. But then we could also open it up to the community. And so we were able to start running some leagues there at the SUU courts. And then I think that, at least I like to think it helped when the city council was considering getting courts and, they saw it's expensive to put in courts. But they could see the numbers we had and how fast these leagues that we were offering sell out. And so I think it gave some confidence in like, okay, we build these pickleball courts, they'll actually be used. And I think there was still some skepticism. Do we really need 8 courts when we build some city courts here, and will they all get used? And anybody that's driven by the courts now, I mean, this time of year when it's so cold, obviously they're not being used as much. But those 8 courts that we have here in Cedar City now, a really nice complex, and they are used a ton. There's always people there waiting to play.